Okay, I seem to have a little problem with one of my files, so I'll change that back to 2D wireframe. But what we end up with, and I've reduced the sizes of these things down, but this will come in much bigger than this. It'll be out here somewhere, full of detail, and you have to basically focus on the bits that you want, strip out the rest. What I normally do is either put a rectangle or a square or a circle around it, and then trim out laboriously around some of these little points to get rid of that little L there. But you can take out contour lines as well, so certain things aren't important. You can even take out the road center line if you want as well. So, you know, lots of these things can be removed if you want them. So when you've got the right sort of size to suit yourself, the other thing that you'll get is, if I just select this and delete it for a second, you'll get this type of file, which is the height file. If I go into shaded with that, we can see that this has got heights to it. Now, the tricky bit really is if we look at this and just pan up and I go back to wireframe, you can see that all these buildings are different heights off the ground. So we're not, 100% certain where ground level is. And in fact, down here, if I take a dimension from that point up vertically, I can't do it because of the orientation of this, which is again one of those really frustrating things. Never mind. I could rotate this around. I'm just going to rotate around that axis. Doesn't allow me to do it, so I can click on it, right click, and rotate axis, and it's going to be around the X axis, I think. Yeah, around the X axis, going that direction. So in a distance, I rotate it around there. So no, I don't. I rotate it around the Y axis. I always get confused with this. So select that, right click, rotate axis, round Y through 90, enter. I'm looking for X and Y so I can measure straight up. That's the way I'm now in a different orientation. So I should be able to measure the distance from this point up vertically. So I'm looking at about 80 odd meters, 79, 80 meters from this origin point to sort of the general level of this. And then I can right click on that and just reset this axis to world. Excuse me. So you've got to position the floor plan somewhere. You don't have to. You can bring both of them in separately and just do it in SketchUp. But if you bring them in as one file, it's just slightly easier, I guess. So what you've got is this, and you've got a reduced site. Now I put the origin of that slap bang in the center. If I just was to select this, Control C, come into this and Control Shift. Oops, I want to go there. So Control Shift V. This is going to insert it as a block, and then I'll insert it away from this. So this is all one thing now, not broken up into bits and pieces. And then I can kind of move this along the axis into a rough position. So I'm going to try and keep this from snapping to one of these extra heights. And then I can use Control and the arrow keys. Let me just select it first. So position it into some sort of resemblance of its location. So it's going to be roundabouts, sort of there. It's not, doesn't match up exactly. So you've got to do the best job you can. Find the bits that's accurate to your project, and in my case, it's these things. But for the purposes of just getting something roundabouts right, because these heights don't go all the way up to the roof ridge, these go up to an eaves height or something. So let's just look at that in 3D. So we've now got that at level there and this at level here, so we can move this up, say about 80 meters in that direction. So 80. I think this is in meters. 80. So that's now under the side there. You notice that these bits are slightly higher. So again, it's something that you're going to have to live with or move down in sort of SketchUp. But that's the way in which you get the two things to sort of work together. Okay, if I change this to shaded, we can get some sort of different look. So that's our height map in there. And the only thing left for you to do is to save this as a DWG or DXF, and version 10, I think 2010 would probably, don't save it to the latest version, it won't come into SketchUp. I think it's about 2010 or earlier is what you want. And what I will do next is go into SketchUp and insert the geolocation, and then we can bring this in to it. Okay, so that's the first bit from Edina into AutoCAD. Okay, the final bit is to bring it all together. So I'm in SketchUp, and this is what sort of the final outcome is going to be. My site plan, I suppose, could have been a bit bigger, or this could have been a bit smaller, based on the fact that I'm looking at this as my sort of area of development. But I'll just show you how to sort this out, how to make it as neat and tidy as you possibly can. So let's just go to File, Geolocation, Clear Location. It's going to strip that out. So open up a SketchUp file. The other thing I'm going to do is purge out everything, purge unused, components, purge unused, and then back to materials and purge unused. So what I suggest you do, because a lot of materials attached to the guy that's in here, I normally delete him and then go to components and delete the components or purge unused. So if he's not in the project, then he'll be purged out, and that then allows us to purge all the materials as well from materials later. So you end up with a sort of a clean palette. I could save this as a template then, but it doesn't take too long to do. So site first, so File, Geolocation, Add Location, or you've got this icon up here, so click that. And then make allowances for my bandwidth, and I don't know why it says that, because Google Chrome is my browser. So we've got our site. This is my location. I don't want the labels on my satellites, so I can get rid of those. I could go for the map option, but then brings all the labels back, so it's a bit pointless really. And then select region. So I'll pick a bigger region this time. Maybe I can pick more of the site on there. Click grab, and that's going to bring it into the site. Okay, so you might find it looks like that. That's simply because terrain materials aren't toggled on. And that's the site brought in, all georeferenced. If you bear in mind that north is green, so that means this is east, west is over this way, south is coming down this way. Okay, so when we do a solar analysis thing on this, it's going to track from east to west. So the final bit, excuse me, is to bring in the AutoCAD file. Now, the other thing to remember is that in AutoCAD, this file is basically in meters. Okay, let's just step this back and bring in the site plan as well. Control Z. There we go. So we're bringing in both, but this is drawn in meters. Okay, and I've saved this as a 2010 version. So back to SketchUp, and then File, Import, and this is the one site and heights combined, 10. So it's saved as a 2010 version. Options. Use these two. Merge coplanar faces. That basically sorts out a lot of the meshing on the top into a flat surface, and orientate faces consistently. That sometimes helps. You can always change that afterwards, but that's going to orientate the surface faces so they're a consistent way. Not always the right way you want, but certainly consistent. And units, meters, not millimeters, although it'll come in tiny. And then we'll say, okay, I'm not interested in preserving the drawing origin. I'll just place it manually. So OK to that. Import. The other thing to point out on the import dialog box, just make sure you're looking for AutoCAD files. I'll say close, and this is what I mean by merge coplanar faces and orientate faces. So some of them white, some of them are blue, depends on what was probably the dominant surface when it merged them. But that's not necessarily a problem, because we can double click to edit this and then select everything and then choose this color, maybe material 5, and just click on one, and then all update to the right color. What we could have done is individually gone around and orientated faces. So we're nearly there. We've got to position it, but we also got some of these lines. Now there's a little way of sorting these out. You can keep them. It's not against the law to have little lines on a drawing, but if you use the eraser tool in combination with the shift key, that's going to hide these things. Oops, that's hidden the whole lot. So double click to edit. Don't explode this, because you'll end up with a lot of lines everywhere. This is just for reference, so you use it as such. So click your shift key and your mouse with the eraser tool. So that's E for eraser, and that'll hide all those lines. This sorts that out. So you've got some bits and pieces we could sort out against this back edge possibly as well. No, just the obvious ones. So it looks a bit neater. You could go around sorting it all out if you could be bothered. There's a few more in the location that my building is, around this way. So some of these. Okay, so knock yourself out with that. There's loads and loads you could sort out. I'm not going to go any further than that. Once I've coloured these in, press and hold on this eraser tool, and you just drag across those things. Okay, so that's basically our box, and then we can move this into position. Let's move the site up to there. Okay, so that is pretty much it. Now you've got the option of kind of aligning this as well. If you look, these are kind of flat now, or some of them are flat, some of them are probably just off the ground as it comes up here. Let's see if we have our terrain toggled on, that they kind of line up. And you can see that when you toggle the terrain, it's a little bit more accurate with the heights of these things. So it's pretty impressive what you can actually do with it. But the only thing is, if you've got a terrain toggled on and these things are slightly off axis, then it is an absolute nightmare to draw rectangles and stuff in this program, because it orientates to the face. So for all your sort of modeling and geometry, toggle terrain off, and then when you finally come around to sort of printing stuff off and viewing things, toggle terrain back on. Okay, so that is basically a summary of the process to get height data from Adina all the way down through AutoCAD and into SketchUp for your use. The final thing I'm going to say is that this is a church. Obviously it's not a flat roofed church, so there are certain bits which are probably more local to where you're developing that you need to kind of go in and just make sure that these things look a bit more real than this, because this is not necessarily that acceptable. Okay, so just bear that in mind as well. That's it.